Well, hello there. Thanks for joining me. I am Dr. Jen, and I'm so pleased that you've joined me for today's show. Recently, Michael and I had to do our first eviction in 6 years, sadly. I started part of this journey as lease violations, explaining the part one in episode 180. Today's episode is part two of an eviction nightmare, basically in slow motion. I am a landlord renting out an apartment in this case in British Columbia, and it ended up being a 6 month ordeal. And compared to some of you out there in landlord world, that's pretty quick. I've heard of nightmare cases that have taken more than 6 months, sometimes over a year, especially if you're dealing with New York City and some of these other fun places like that with evictions. But in this case, we had a tenant who had unauthorized pets, surprise subtenants, and it ends up being not what you think. And so we finally had to go to court, endless hearings, court filings, bailiff at the door. This is part two of my first eviction in 6 years. Yes, even Dr. Jen of My Life as a Landlord has to go to court and has to do evictions. So, what I started as a simple tenancy in 2021 has become a procedural odyssey through British Columbia's Residential Tenancy Branch and even the Supreme Court. Today, in this episode, we're going to trace every step, each notice, delay, painful discovery, as one self managing landlord learns just how slowly justice can move. So in this case, it's mid-May. Me as the owner and my amazing handyman have permission, as we have given proper notice, to enter all of the apartments in this particular location as part of our annual maintenance plan. This is normal for all of our units. We entered a two-bedroom apartment who has a single occupant. The lease started as a couple, and the boyfriend departed about a year before all of this. And she's supposed to be in this unit all on her own. But now there is a second bed that's clearly been slept in, and there's a dog bed and food bowl. The lease is clear: no pets, no extra occupants without written permission. And for the first few weeks, things are quiet. I had heard from the neighbors, I had heard from my own staff that they had seen people coming and going on a regular basis. And then barking every morning, every evening. And then the second adult appears in the window with the two dogs. You see, under BC's Residential Tenancy Act, having unauthorized pets or unapproved occupants can justify a 1 month notice to end tenancy if it's properly served and documented. And as the owners, we've heard from other people about this extra motion. It's only supposed to be her in this unit, and then the dogs. Well, after the inspection for annual maintenance, I emailed the tenant about the guest policy and visiting animals. They're not allowed to have a key, and they can't stay more than 10 days. And further, I reminded her that the guests are not permitted to use the shared laundry. Otherwise, they needed to apply to be added on the lease. No answer. Further visits to the property are also met with silence. There's no one around her unit when we happen to be there, and secretly, as the landlord, I hope all of this goes away. Remember, this started in May. No action, no application from who we suspected is the new boyfriend with his two dogs and what we think is his teenage child. Whispers, but no action. And on our end as well. You'll see this as a mistake as we go forward. There's no further reports of mischief until August. The neighboring apartment is vacant, and I arrive to show the unit next door. I can hear two large dogs barking, and I email the tenant again after the showing, but this time it's a warning letter. It was also at this point that I realized that I had not removed the former boyfriend from the lease previously, which was 18 months prior. I am human, I do make mistakes. It is of note that the lease must be completely current if this heads towards an eviction. The warning letter read in part, and I did cut and paste from the warning letter so you can hear it. Hi, tenant. We've noticed for some time that there are additional beings staying often at your unit as well as dogs. We need to bring your lease to current, including qualifying your new adult occupants, removing the former boyfriend from the lease, and collecting pet damage deposit for the two dogs. Number one, I will send you and former boyfriend a removal of being form electronically by email for you both to sign. This will confirm that the former boyfriend is no longer living at the residence, which occurred some time ago and I missed it. Number two, as per our lease agreement, we must approve any new roommates. Please have your adult occupants over 18 apply at our website, including full pay stubs, IDs within 7 days. For insurance purposes, these folks need to be declared as they are no longer considered guests. Please include two dogs information on the application form. This now would create a roommate situation. Under a roommate situation, we only accept one payment for the security deposit and one check will be written to return the security deposit. Any shift in roommates will include roommates providing deposits amongst roommates. The landlord will not remit deposit mid-tenancy nor for an individual. Further, we only accept one payment for rent. Please consolidate your rent payments and deposit rent as one payment. Payments and mischief among roommates is not an individual item for the landlord. We are renting to your group as a whole. As we expect to be paid in one payment, any non-payment from a roommate or mischief and non-adherence to the lease terms is viewed from the landlord as the entire group. We do not evict individuals, enforce the lease items on individuals, nor remit deposit portions to individuals. Number three, once we review, approve roommates, we can then send a second additional beings on the lease, which will add the unauthorized occupants and make them authorized. Further, we will likely ask for a pet damage deposit once we have qualified you and the animals. Typically, we ask for $100 each once approved. If you have any questions or concerns about this, please give me a call at my phone number. That was the warning letter. Nothing is heard from the tenant. 1 week comes and goes. I email the tenant again. The lease is successfully updated, removing the former boyfriend from the lease with her as the only authorized occupant, but there's been no action on the unauthorized adult male, teenage child, or for the two dogs. We wait another 2 weeks. And of course, now we're into September. There is some emailing back and forth, some texting, and nothing is received from the tenant to support qualifying or adding the additional occupants or the dogs to the lease. And of course, there's been some claims that the website isn't working, but ironically, I'm getting applications from other potential tenants for that vacant unit right next door with no problem. So whatever the story is, it isn't jiving. Then came the last straw. The cleaners reported that the washing machines were full of black dog hair, cigarette butts, and fleas. Fleas in the shared laundry. Now, we have a few smoking tenants in the building, but she is also a smoker, and the only dogs in the building are the dogs in her unit, which of course are still not authorized. And they've been using the laundry, and that's the last straw. So the red flags are real now. The Residential Tenancy Branch rules double-checked. A 1-month notice to end tenancy for cause is served by email and by posting a hard copy on the door of the apartment on September 30th, 2025. Now, I'm going to read to you what this eviction notice actually said because there are some check boxes. So the check boxes I've made where tenant has allowed an unreasonable number of occupants in the site, unit, property, park. Tenant or person permitted on the property by the tenant has seriously jeopardized the health or safety or lawful right to the landlord or other occupant. This is because of the laundry, or put the the landlord's property at significant risk. Again, because we don't know who these people are. Tenant or person permitted on the property by the tenant has engaged in illegal activity that has or is likely to have jeopardized a lawful right or interest of another occupant or landlord, which is the laundry. Breach of material term of the tenancy agreement that was not corrected within a reasonable time after written notice to do so. And then details of the events are at the bottom. This is typical in any eviction notice. This is pre-made for British Columbia, but there are other pre-made forms, or you can use wording that I say here. So this is the details of the events. I'm reading it directly off the letter. The eviction notice. Tenant has been warned of unauthorized occupants in the unit multiple times over multiple months, as she is the only authorized occupant of the unit. Communication with her includes email exchanges about guests, April 2nd, 3rd, 7th, including at least one dog. April 10th, the tenant was reminded by email that the guests were not permitted to have a key or use the laundry per lease. May 12th and 13th, landlord conducted walkthrough of all units as part of annual maintenance and saw beds in the second room of this unit, along with unauthorized pet dishes. September 4th, landlord saw two German Shepherd dogs with adult male enter exit unit and texted tenant about the guests continuing to be at the unit. September 5th, posted warning letter number 1 on the back door of the unit at shoulder height, stating that all occupants would need to qualify to be added to the lease and the dogs would have to be approved, asking to submit an application ASAP. September 22nd, after no response and no application from the quote unquote guests, emailed the tenant asking what is going on as warning letter number 2. Also on September 22nd, received an email from the building cleaners that there were fleas and pet hair in the laundry, and this is the tenant. This tenant has the only animals in the building. September 29th, emailed the tenant. The previous co-tenant was removed from the lease and reminding that she still has unauthorized occupants and no application received, warning letter number 3. We have given many chances to declare and qualify the additional occupants and review the two large dogs. The dogs that are not approved and the guests are clearly using the laundry. This is now impacting the entire building, and we have no idea who these people are. Qualifying occupants and animals in the building is a reasonable and proper request for a landlord. We are no longer interested in working with this tenant. That's what I said. So, as we submitted the eviction paperwork, I emailed her and we posted it on the door. Technically, we have to give one full calendar month notice for this type of eviction notice. And even though I emailed it and posted it on the door on September 30th, British Columbia takes service time for up to 5 days, depending on how you serve the tenant. So even though it's 1 month notice to end tenancy, service for cause because of mischief, we could have said, theoretically, we could have said October 31st. That would have been one full calendar month. But because we were serving it on September 30th, we gave until November 30th just to make sure there was no dispute. Now, a tenant in British Columbia has 10 days to dispute the notice or to move out, to agree to move out at the end of it. The next morning, she disputes. And so begins a 6-month ride through the bureaucracy, paperwork, and frustration of being a landlord in British Columbia. So the Residential Tenancy Branch sets a hearing of December 4th. 9 weeks later, the dogs stay, the guest stays, the stress stays, and now they're getting louder. They keep paying rent because if they don't, that's a quick way for them to speed up this arbitration. She got served on September 30th. October 1st rent was paid. November 1st rent was paid. December 1st rent was paid. Meanwhile, I'm keeping records the whole time. Sound logs, dated photos, screenshots of texts, witness notes from neighbors, complaints of barking dogs, and the hearing day arrives December 4th. Conference call at 10 a.m. Both sides log in. The arbitrator will call everybody to explain their name, spell their name in detail regarding the 1 month notice for cause that the tenant is now disputing. The hearing took 2 hours, 2 hours, and it's over. Now, they have up to 30 days for a decision, and they remit the decision by mail. All of this is incredibly painful, but because it was December 4th, we received the decision 2 weeks later, right before Christmas. The arbitrator agrees with us. She has to get out. Tenancy must end within 14 days. So by the end of December, it should be over. We're hoping right after Christmas, it's over. But it's not. The tenant refuses to go. She sends an email to us calling the decision unfair, and promises to appeal to the BC Supreme Court. But she never files. Now we're into January. Once the Residential Tenancy Branch order is final, landlords like me can file in the BC Supreme Court to enforce with a writ of possession. All of this takes time and money and stress, but landlords can't change the locks or remove things themselves. This act would violate the BC Residential Tenancy Act. So each step after this must still be by the book. Okay, 15 days after she refuses to get out, Now the third week in January, I filed for enforcement of for a writ of possession. The cost, nearly $1,000 in court fees and affidavit preparation, plus 2 full workdays lost, where I have to stand at the BC Supreme Court. 4 weeks after that, now mid-February, a Supreme Court justice signs the writ of possession, and it's served to the tenant February 26th, 48 hours for the tenant to vacate. Now remember, we started this in September. It actually started in April, and then it's all gone down this way. The whole time people remain in the unit, and ironically, they remain paying rent, which is just the craziest part. So 48 hours pass, nothing. She's supposed to be out. She's been ordered to get out by the judge. The suite remains occupied. On the surface, the law says possession is granted, but in reality, the lock still turns from the inside. So that's when I call a licensed bailiff. Sometimes they call the sheriff. It depends on where you are. But where I'm at in BC, it's a bailiff. In Hawaii, it's a bailiff. One of the few people legally allowed to remove a tenant under court order is a bailiff. But there's no bailiffs in rural BC. So the $1,500 goes to the bailiff, and to fly them in is another 1,000. And keep in mind, they need more than that. February 28th, 9 a.m., the bailiff's rental truck pulls up, which of course I've paid for. 2 movers unload dollies. The locksmith stands by, and as the landlord, all I can do is observe. I cannot interfere. I can't go in. I can only watch. And at the sound, at the door, silence, and then the sound of a drill. When the bailiff finally enters, the sight is gut-wrenching. Holes punched through the drywall, floors caked in animal waste, kitchen cabinet doors ripped off, graffiti on the walls. Damage estimates surpass $18,000. The security deposit, $1,200. The odds of recovery, slim. As the landlord, I can apply for a monetary order again through the Residential Tenancy Branch or even the small claims court, but collection depends on the tenant's asset, and often there's little to collect. I've done this before, and I've gone down this entire road all the way to a judgment, been awarded fees, and then trying to collect is another issue. Trying to get blood out of a turnip just usually doesn't work. But in this case, I can only stand by as the bailiff empties the unit, putting all the furniture, possessions, everything on the curb in front of the building. Then the locksmith changes the locks, both of them, front and back door, and the bailiff hands me the new keys. Job done, tenant and items removed. I now have possession of my unit, which is the whole goal of an eviction. Possession of the unit. It takes 3 months and $22,000 to rebuild the suite. Legal fees add another $3,100, not including months of rent gone. As the landlord, I reread every single document and timeline, forms served correctly, evidence filed on time, each regulation followed. Still, the entire process from first notice to final repair has stretched over past half a year. And I did everything right, yet I still feel like losing. But lucky for me, the story I just told you could have been what happened in my first eviction in 6 years, but it didn't. In British Columbia, when you evict for cause, the tenant has 10 days to dispute the notice, and the tenant did not dispute the notice, which means she agreed to depart. In this case, I gave the tenant 58 days to depart from September 30th to November 30th to ensure they had proper notice and plenty of time to move. So even though they didn't dispute it, would they actually leave? And when they left, what condition would the unit be in? November 30th came and went. My entire team knew this was going. We had heard rumors of trucks around. Neighbors are reporting that they are seeing something happening, but no text, no email, no call, no indication that they had actually left. So my team and I went to the property and knocked. No answer. Tried the door. Door was unlocked. So we opened the door, we went in. The place was empty. The tenant had simply left the unit keys on the counter, normal wear and tear only. Unfortunately, the unit had been smoked in and there was significant mold on the windowsills due to the drapes and no airflow behind it. The cleaning bill was high, and rather than further issues with the tenant, I actually returned the security deposit with proper interest to her within the 15 days allotted. Why did I do that? Because after 4 years, even with the rent increases permitted by British Columbia, the unit rent was $300 per month lower than market rent. I could have not returned the deposit, and that's a personal preference. You do what you'd like. But the grief to dollars ratio for me, the stress versus the money versus the time to actually fight any of the damages or any of the deductions that we could have taken off for security deposit just wasn't worth it. I would rather return it and know that that chapter is closed. She can't come back on us because we didn't return anything. It's all done. And the fight is over. So no wonder I wonder if there would be any more encounter with this tenant that I've just evicted. And by the way, word got around the neighborhood pretty quickly that she was getting evicted, and many applauded us for doing so. Often the stories come out after whatever has been going on ends. This has happened many times. Often when I show up to a property, because I'm not there all the time, I get the, hey, can I talk to you for a second? Hey, can we go to coffee? Hey, can we just have a quick chat? And that's when the true story comes out. I'm happy to hear it. And I've been a landlord now for 20 years. So when those stories happen, I know already they're about to spill the tea. And I'm okay with that. But in this case, onward and upward. The tenant successfully vacated November 30th, and we had a new tenant renting the unit on December 19th, less than 3 weeks later, even in the middle of winter. My team did a great job dealing with the smoke damage, mold damage, changing some of the taps. We had to get a new oven and basically completely resetting one of our biggest units. But a single mom with 2 kids now live in this unit right down the street from a family member just in time for Christmas. As this was part 2 of a 2-part episode, I figured I would tell you how bad it could have went, or I could have told you how it did go. Instead, I opted to tell you both. Remember, tenants are part of the asset, and this is a business relationship. Just a reminder to know your game in your local area, wherever your rentals are, and then play that game well. Know the days that you have to have things done by. All of these details matter. And then think about, what will you do if? And then you have to be patient as it plays out. And that's usually the hardest part. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe for more expert advice and real stories from across the rental property world. I'm recording this episode today in San Antonio, Texas. Why? Because real estate takes you places. Where do you want real estate to take you? Join me next week for episode 208, where I walk you through a case study of a friend who reached out asking me questions about buying a home near her son's college, wanting to rent rooms out to his fellow students. We'll walk through that one and more. I'll see you there.